Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys and their stories with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Sally Orange to the conversation. Welcome, Sally.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. It's lovely to have you on as a guest. Just very quickly, I'll explain how we got to this conversation and then I'll let you do a little bit more about who you are and what you do. But first, yeah, I love having conversations with inspirational people, especially people that I sort of get in many ways. And in particular, we share a passion for an activity, but we'll talk about that in a second. But we got to this because reaching in and having conversations with amazing humans is what this is all about, inspirational people. You came on my radar and it was very much, you know what, I need to try and have this conversation with you. So I'm so grateful that we got this together and I appreciate it because you're not in the country that often and you're out doing lots of different things. So I feel very privileged to have you with me. So welcome, Sally. Tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. Really looking forward to chatting. So my name is Sally Orange, and that really is my name. People think that I've often changed my name because of what I do, but I served for 22 years in the Royal Army Medical Corps as a physiotherapist. I had struggles with my mental health probably for about 25 years, and unfortunately ended up being medically discharged from the army. But I've kind of turned that around, and in the more recent years, I started using sport to sort of help with my mental health. And I am now, in a nutshell, the only person in the world that's ran a marathon on every continent dressed as a different piece of fruit.
Wow.
So we'll go into why. But yeah, that's just a little short, funny claim to fame that I have, but it does link into mental health as well.
Amazing. Well, there's so much to unravel in this. And I remember when we had our first conversation before we recorded this episode, it was just all this stuff you were telling me. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is so incredible. I love it. It really inspires me. So listen, the big thing here is you tell a story. I want to know more about your journey, how it sort of all came about, what happened, the change and stuff. So if you're ready, please tell us a story.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, I suppose I now what I call myself an adventure athlete, but I'm also a professional speaker. So I speak about my journey in the hope that it will help other people just basically never have to get to the place where I got to. So I've now swam across oceans, I've climbed mountains, I've ran over 80 marathons, cycled across countries. And yeah, do it all to sort of promote looking after ourselves and good mental well-being.
Brilliant. And so talk to me then. So this journey started somewhere. You didn't just wake up one morning and go, I'm going to run seven continents. There's a motivation in there, isn't there? And you mentioned it.
Yeah,
Health. So tell
yeah.
me a little bit about that journey.
So as I mentioned, I've struggled with my mental health for 25 years. And a lot of people, because I say that I was in the military, I did go to Afghanistan, and they quite often automatically assume that I must have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because of the things that I saw when I was in Afghanistan. I did see some horrific things, and there was some, horrendous situations, but that wasn't for me what, I actually felt somebody at that time because I had a real purpose and we were sort of trying to help people. Um, but my self-confidence and my self-esteem has just always bubbled under the surface of I'm not good enough. I have this reoccurring story that I'm not good enough. It kind of started when I was 16 and broke my leg, and had to have a month in hospital. And unfortunately, my boyfriend at the time also went off with my best friend while I was in hospital. And that didn't have the best impact on me. Again, just kind of made me feel I wasn't good enough. But it made me realize I wanted to become a physiotherapist. And I did my A levels. Unfortunately, I failed them. So I resat them and did even worse the second time. But I knew that I desperately wanted to be a physio. Long story short, but it basically ended up being that I got rejected from university 6 times in a row before I was finally accepted to be on the physiotherapy degree. I had to go and do another degree beforehand. So I first applied in 1991 and finally graduated in 2000. So it was a long journey. But I think, again, those rejections had an impact on me. You're not good enough, you're not good enough. So it's sort of the story, the narrative that I'd got in my head I was getting the evidence that I really am not good enough. And through the years, as I say, it's sort of, I was very up and down, and I'd go to the GP and I'd have medication, and then I'd have to change the medication. And it was back in 2013 now that things, weren't just
Yeah.
going downhill. I basically kind of, fell off not literally, but sort of fell off the edge of the cliff, and my mental health plummeted. I wrote a suicide letter. I was ready. I couldn't see a place in this world for me. I felt the biggest burden, and I just thought that the world would be better off without me, because they wouldn't have to, be kind of looking out for me. And I, ended up I was sort of taken to hospital and under the care of the crisis team. And slowly, with tweaks of medication and therapy, I sort of got help in being pulled out of this really deep, dark hole that I was in. I was literally 20 hours a day, just wanted to be dead. And the other 4 hours I managed to sleep, because I had some sleeping tablets, and they didn't work that well. So it was only, sort of 4 hours. But then, sort of gradually, I mean, I hadn't left the house for 2 months, and I ended up not actually speaking on the phone for 2 years. I was just, it just the fear of that, or even text messages. I'd have to have someone with me to read text messages. So it was a really, really difficult time. But gradually, I suppose I found the outdoors and movement, and now try and use that to help others see that, it didn't start with running a marathon. It started by going to the end of the garden and back.
Yeah.
And then the next day, or maybe 3 or 4 days later, doing that twice. It really was that kind of level, because when you've not been out of bed for so long, you've become really quite weak. I'd lost a lot of weight. And it sort of gradually, I had run a marathon back in 2007. That's when I did my first marathon, and remember that feeling of sort of crossing the finish line, thinking, wow, I felt like a superhero, because I'd achieved something that for me I never thought possible. I'd literally from the age of 8 thought I'd love to run a marathon. I'd seen it on TV when the first London Marathon was on, but it took me until I was 34 until I plucked up the courage to actually run it, because again, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. It just went there. And I got reminded of how I felt when I finished. So I decided, maybe I set myself a goal of a half marathon. Again, I had to look at when that was going to be, because it couldn't be the next week. And gradually I've sort of gone on and have now ran 84 marathons.
It's incredible, honestly. I find it fascinating, and of course, our common love is running. Well, I love running. I don't think I've ever asked you if you love it. You just do a lot of it.
I just do a lot of it, and I don't think I do love it.
Oh,
I
okay.
love it after. I
Yeah.
love the people that you can meet.
Yeah.
But actually at the time, I find it really difficult. I find it really hard. I'm not a naturally good runner. I'm not fast, but that's all part of it for me, that you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the fittest, but you can go out, have fun. For me, raising money for charity is a big part of it, and you can meet other people. So that's what, that's why I do it, the feeling that I get after. And there's so many times when I don't want to go. The amount of times that I can put my running kit on for the whole day,
Yeah.
and then I still haven't gone out. But I've got my kit on.
Way there.
But it might be later until I actually get out. But I can say that although there's many a time I've regretted having not gone for a run, I've never regretted having gone for a run. So I think that's the proof in the pudding, really.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? We know what it feels like after, and it's tiring, and especially the sort of things that you're into, because they are very heavy load endurance sports, right? Yeah, for 84 marathons and all the other stuff above that, the ultra stuff. So I just find it really fascinating. But I'm going to just touch on a couple of points, if that's okay, and ask you
Yeah,
a couple of
absolutely.
direct questions to those. So you said it was slow, to progress from just being in bed to what was the motivation, or where did that come from to say I need to get up?
I can't say there was a huge amount of motivation, if I'm honest.
Okay.
My mum would sort of come into my room. I had to move back to my parents. I was
Okay.
living on my own, and I wasn't safe living on my own. And yeah, it was my mum trying to just sort of motivate me, and she would say, because I wasn't eating, she would say, you're going to be sectioned if you don't
Right,
eat.
okay.
um and yeah, I must admit, I can't say there was any real motivation, because that was one thing that had just gone. Motivation for anything, there was no, I said, there was no color in the world, there was no taste in
Mm,
any of the food, that it was just numb. I had no desire to read or watch TV or do anything. That there was just no, it was a forcing myself. So yeah, it wasn't a want, it was I suppose a need, a fundamental
mm.
life skill to get outside and go for a walk, because you have to go to the shop, or
Yeah.
and that's the level that it was. It wasn't a get outside and go and see mountains and all of this. It was like, you're going to need to, even if it's walking to the car, to get in the car to go to the shop, because I had to be deemed safe to be able to go back to my own home, where I would need to shop for myself and do that. I mean, I was at a point where I wasn't washing, so it started with having to get in the shower, and to brush my hair. That's the level that it was at. Um, so yeah, it was like eating. I didn't want to eat. I had no motivation to eat, but I was told I needed to eat.
Yeah. I just find it really fascinating, Sally, and I think it's just really important for others to hear that as well, because there is always this issue, isn't there, of, how do you start? Where does the motivation? And it can be the smallest things as well, right? So just what you explained, those small little self-care actions actually are really important in that, albeit they can feel like they're hard work at times, and getting out and doing that. It sounds like you had good support around you with your mum, so blessed your mum, because she obviously stayed by you and wanted you to get better, right? As
Yes, yeah.
parents do.
And I think it's really important to sort of share the impact that it had on them as well, because I remember at time, and I still feel very guilty about this, but I just remember saying to my mum, if you loved me, why would you not just let me die? Because it felt, yeah, it felt that you weren't, I wasn't being helped. And I remember thinking, I just wish that I'd lost my life in Afghanistan. And I know that might sound awful, but the outcome would be exactly the same, that I wouldn't be here. But rather than taking my own life, there would nobody be thinking, well, what could we have done? The situation would have been the same, but the reasoning behind it would have left a different impact on people. Um, so yeah, that's been just being completely honest about it.
And I really respect and appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, and I look at it through the lens that I see my life with my daughter, and thinking of your mum's or your parents' position. And, the last thing we would ever want, and to give confidence to anybody out there as a parent, the last thing any of us want is for our child to be not here. And we will do everything within our power to make that a reality, that they're always with us, as for whatever it is. So I can only feel great empathy towards your mum, and and your parents, because that is an important part of that relationship we have with our parents. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
And
This is in my my 40s.
yeah.
That I felt like this. So it was quite interesting that the care team as well, by having to move back home, they were very um, sort of trying to help the consideration for my parents and sort of saying to me, you know, they want to be your parent. So it was things like my medication they would give to my parent to give to me so that they could almost have their role back as a parent and I be back as a child.
Yeah.
Just to because it was in, you know, the family home that we'd grown up in, and it was to give them some kind of responsibility, I guess,
Yeah.
to feel that they were helping me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really, really difficult time. It's still so vivid, and particularly I'm actually back home at my parents at the moment, and I walk into certain rooms and I go, this was where this happened, and this was where this happened, and so it's yeah, when I come back, I still have it very vivid in my memory.
But it's also love and support in that environment as well for you, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Again, well, I met your mum briefly, didn't I, before we started recording this, just to make
You
sure
did, yes, because I
the
told her to
rules
not
don't
come in
come,
and
don't come
she
in.
forgot.
But no, all really good. So let's talk about what you do now then. So you've taken this journey, or you've been on this journey where things have been really difficult and challenging. You've had some really sort of low, dark places that you've been to. Your surname is Orange, and you're wearing orange, and then there was this thought of fruit. And talk to me. How did this all come about? You are the best marketeer, by the way, in terms of what you're trying to promote and the message you're trying to deliver. So can you describe that for everybody?
Oh, well, thank you. So I am wearing orange, and I do actually have an orange a fruit costume here with me. And yeah, basically what I found. So when I did my very first marathon, I did it as a superhero, and I got that superhero finish feeling when I finished. And then I needed to raise more money to be able to do the London Marathon again the second time. And I thought, what can I do different to help raise that money? And I thought, well, my surname's Orange. I'll run as an orange. Um, I actually got the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon dressed as a piece of fruit after that, which was was quite fun. But I also saw that when I was running, so many people were smiling, or they'd sort of come up to me and say, "What? Why are you dressed as an orange?" And I'd say, "Well, my surname's Orange." And actually, when I was in Afghanistan, I got a banana costume sent out and did another one there as a banana with a friend. And after about two or three, I kind of thought, wow, this, it kind of really gets people engaged. It's bright, it's colourful, it's fun. And they ask why. And decided actually it's a great way to be able to break the stigma and open conversations about poor mental health. And the amount of people, when I say to people, the reason I do it is to break the stigma, that they will say, I've had a problem, or I know someone has had a problem. And it just opens that conversation in a really kind of subtle but light-hearted way that if people aren't wanting to talk about it, they just go back to talking about the costume or the race that we're doing. And so I just found the engagement really, really good. And yeah, after I'd done, two or three marathons, as I say, Afghanistan, London, I was on exercise I was still serving at this point. I was on exercise in America. So I did the US Marine Corps Marathon. And I did that just as a watermelon, just because I'd got a new costume. And I thought, well, I've done three continents here, maybe, I like traveling. I'd already traveled anyway to lots of places. And so I decided, well, I'll look at doing every continent dressed as a piece of fruit. Because it's just that bit different. And what I love about it, particularly young people. So I'm incredibly fortunate to be the national ambassador for the Army Cadet Force. And also I do a lot of work with the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. So I have actually worn my fruit costumes at Buckingham Palace and spoke to young people about the power of actually being different.
Yep.
My surname growing up wasn't the easiest,
Yeah.
because when you're getting embarrassed and people are calling you squash and juicy and all my mum always jokes that she was going to call me Anne, which doesn't sound too bad, but then you realize it's Anne Orange. So yeah, or
And
Lucy.
humor.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And and as I say, young people really kind of love. I say young people, older people, corporates, organizations. It just makes people smile, and it's so nice to make people smile, but I always think you wouldn't learn to swim in a storm. So why with our mental health do we wait till we get to that crisis point before we actually learn the tools that will help us if we're struggling? And I really try and make sure that other people, if by my openness, I mean, I basically I lost my career, I lost my my job, my life, my community by being medically discharged. And I don't want anyone else to ever have to go through that. And so if by getting help sooner, I didn't get help sooner because I didn't want to tell anyone, because I didn't want to be, sort of tarnished with a brush. But actually, we all have difficulty, we all have struggles. And that is life. You don't have to be in the armed forces to have that. And yeah, by me being open, then hopefully, others will do the same. I'm very open. I still take medication now. I still see a therapist, and I probably will do for the rest of my life because that is what keeps me well.
Mm.
And so often people will say, "Well, you don't seem or look." Well, no, a diabetic doesn't
Absolutely.
often seem diabetic or look diabetic
Yeah.
as an asthmatic doesn't. But that's because they're taking the medication that keeps them well and on the right, on the straight and narrow, as it were.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so important though, isn't it? I love it because the key to me is about the color, isn't it? And here I am wearing a black polo shirt, and it's I always feel really bad wearing black.
Orange is the new black, is what I
Well,
say
this is
to
true,
people.
so we've crafted something perfect. But that's it, isn't it? And it's about color and actually I like that idea. I always wear colored socks. I always wear something with color, albeit mostly the t-shirt's a black one because it just makes my life a lot easier, right? Or simpler, as I like to call it. But it is so important then that conversation starter piece. That's the key, isn't it? So yeah, what you're doing is amazing and it's helping. You're encouraging or engaging in much greater conversations. If you weren't wearing an orange outfit or a banana or a watermelon, do you think people would engage so well?
No, not the same as well, because you blend in with everybody else.
Yeah.
And it really makes me smile that, when we're younger or in so many different environments, we want to fit in.
Yeah.
We want to be part of something, particularly, young people at school, yet they don't want to be different. And that's why I didn't like my surname, because it was that little bit different. But when you get into the real world, and if you're setting up a new business, we're always told, what's your USP? What makes you different? And yet we're telling everybody, that yeah, we're telling something different to what everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
So, it's yeah, sort of, I guess, has become my USP. And when I do my talks, I dress in my different costumes, and I often get other people to dress in the costumes as well. And that's where with young people, they love it. And if they can remember the woman that came into school and they got dressed as a strawberry on that day, if they remember why they've done it, then that gives, because yes, I can talk about marathons, but to young people, they don't know what 26.2 miles is. A lot of adults don't, unless you've actually done that distance. And people say, oh, I'll do it in a car. But it's trying to sort of really immerse individuals into that experience and get them to feel, oh, I feel a bit different in a, people do smile when you're dressed in something, but it's having that purpose behind why I'm dressing like that, yeah, has really sort of engaged people. But I think also the events that I do, or the marathons that I do, I try and sort of put a narrative to them as well. So, for example, I did a marathon in the London Eye during the pandemic because I wanted to symbolise the highs and lows, or the ups and downs that the pandemic had on the nation's mental health. So if you remember, we were all in a bubble,
Yeah.
and I was there in a pod of the London Eye. I got a treadmill.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I was going to say, how do you do a marathon in a pod?
yeah, I got a treadmill,
It's
and
orientated.
it
Okay.
it's going around, and that was to
Yeah.
sort of show that we were moving forward. We
Yeah.
felt like we were going around in circles all the time, but we were actually moving forward, and I could only see other people through a screen, which at that time was exactly what it
Amazing.
was like.
Yeah.
But also then on World Mental Health Day, which was 6 days later, I did the world's deepest underground marathon. So it was a marathon in a mine that we called Beneath the Surface, because you never know what's going on beneath the surface in somebody else's mind. So yeah, it was just again a sort of different narrative to it. And then I also did a swim. Well, it was a triathlon actually. It was called Escape from Alcatraz, and Alcatraz is obviously a prison. And if you think of how you would feel if you were in prison, now my feelings would probably be isolated, guilty, shameful,
Yeah.
alone. And that's how depression feels, that's how mental illness feels, all of those things. And so this prison that you find yourself in, Alcatraz, and the triathlon was to swim from Alcatraz to the shore. Then it was cycling through the streets of San Francisco, which are very hilly, and then it was a run. And so I was in the swim, and I wanted to make the invisible illness visible. So everybody else, when they jumped off the boat into the water, into the shark-infested, freezing cold water, were dressed in black wetsuits. Now I was in a black wetsuit, but I also had a black and white convict outfit on top.
Yeah.
So I now know why, when I was at school and I had to learn to swim in a pair of pajamas,
Yeah.
that was the reason why,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
So, and I was swimming, and I got to a point where the current was so strong, and I was swimming, and I just thought to myself, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just fighting and fighting against this current. And it reminded me with my mental illness when, I'd just been fighting and fighting and fighting. I didn't want to go on medication, and I wanted to come off it, um, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I just told myself, Sally, just go with the flow. And I literally very quickly found myself, I've got myself just to shore.
Yeah.
Now it was to safety. It wasn't where I wanted to be, which again, I think is like, with mental illness, when I had to come home and live with my parents, I was safe. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was safe. I got myself back on track and found myself at the transition, and then set off on the bike. And that's where the hills represented to me the ups and downs, or the highs and lows of mental illness. And then on the run, I ran past the Golden Gate Bridge, and I suddenly stopped. I had this sort of, realization that the bridge was the friends, the family, the clinicians, the support team that an individual needs to bridge the gap and be able to escape from that prison, to escape from Alcatraz. So yeah, it's just narratives like this that I sort of try and make them not about the actual event itself. And I was nowhere near the first, or but it doesn't matter, because you still get the same medal if you come first or last. And I'm not doing it for the actual medal. It's more for the, just the outdoor, the activity, and yeah, just getting across this narrative that hopefully can resonate to those who perhaps don't understand it. Because I also recognize it's really difficult if you're trying to support somebody and you don't know what to say or what to do, just to try and get over how it can feel, even though I can look, bright and in this convict, costume. So yeah, there's often a lot of different costumes involved in some of the challenges that I do.
I love it. I think it's amazing, and I think you're right. I think there's so many metaphors that you can draw, or pieces, parallels to everything that happens in that environment of where you are active and doing those events. And oh my gosh, yeah, I'm sure we could drill down many different ones as well. And you've got another. You did tell me previously actually about another version of this that's not fruit based, right?
Yeah, so well, last year I did 7 marathons, 7 continents in 7 consecutive days. So I'd already done um, every continent as a fruit.
Yeah.
Then I'd done it within 7 days, and that was because it's a global problem. So I wanted to take it around the world. And then actually earlier this year, I did the Everest marathons because I wanted to take the message to the top of the world. So I dressed as a slice of lemon because I was going to be ice in a slice, and have been to the top of the world.
Yeah.
Now, when I started the 777, I was very conscious that it had a high risk of me failing, that I perhaps wasn't going to be able to do these 7 marathons and 7 continents, 16 different time zones. It was, it was brutal. And I thought, well, Antarctica is the hardest continent to get to. It's the most expensive. It takes a lot to get there. So I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be in Antarctica, I might as well dress as something frozen. Might as well dress as something that, I'm going to be cold, so I'm going to be frozen. So I thought I'd be a vegetable. And I decided if I was going to be in Antarctica and frozen, that I'd be a pod of peas. And that was also my safety net, that if I failed in the whole project of doing it in 7 days, it was the start of a new project. So that it was almost like a buffer and a safety net. So I was still going to fall and I'd still feel disappointed that I hadn't achieved it, but I wouldn't fall as far because I'd got that marathon in Antarctica out the way. I didn't do all the other marathons in costumes because again, I had to be sensible. I did my last one as an orange because that was in Miami. And yeah, so I kind of thought, right, why don't I do every continent as a vegetable? So that's now, yeah, my mission of sort of doing it along the same, the same theme, but just fruit and vegetables. I've still got plenty of fruits that I can do, but it just gets me to go away on holiday and just do a marathon while I'm on holiday, and
No.
then make a whole day out of it.
Yeah, I see. Honestly, I love it. I think it's so so good. And obviously, you're doing this to raise awareness of mental health. You're doing this to raise funds for charities, and it's just an incredible combination of things that you've created. I love it.
I mean, I was at an event last week actually, and it's quite handy that the orange costume does fit in a very small bag. It, packs down, and I just happened to have it with me. And I was at an event with the veterans minister, with the army sergeant major, so that the highest non-commissioned officer within the army, some very sort of high profile figures. And I said to each of them, would you mind putting my orange costume? And they all jumped at the chance.
Really?
And yeah, so they all so if you look on my LinkedIn,
Yeah.
you can see all these, yeah, these very prestigious characters and individuals who were like, yeah, we're happy to champion this, because at the end of the day, it's only an orange
Yeah.
costume, but it's what it stands for, that I was so chuffed that they were there to support. We've all sadly in the military, or again, just in general society, a lot of people are aware of others who have taken their own life. And yeah, how can we stop that? And that's by getting people to talk and be there for them. So yeah, it's amazing the impact it can have on different people at different times. And also just showing that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, we can all struggle at times. So yeah, it was great for them to champion it as well, and good fun.
And you have like the peeling thing of an orange as well, don't you? Which is, taking off that outer skin and you're able.
Yeah, we can look hard on the outside, but inside we can be, very, very, very soft, and and parts of that outside as well can, they can get injured, they can get bruised as it was. So yeah, there's quite often yeah, different analogies, and I've got segment costumes, I've got slice costumes. I did have a whole and again, there's lots of different types of oranges. There's mandarins, clementines, the easy peelers, and that's like us as individuals. We can be similar, but we're also very, very different within that as well. So yeah, there's lot. I could go on for long. I've lived with this for
Like,
50 years, this name.
yeah, yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to develop a tough skin,
Of course.
um, because yeah, otherwise it does eat away at you.
Yeah.
When I was younger, it did as well.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, well, I love it. I could carry on talking about it for ages with you. We are coming right to the end. Unfortunately, we do have to sort of draw a line at some point with this conversation. But I'm just going to ask you any final thoughts, Sally. I've loved listening to you and your story, and I'm going to find out more about you, of course. And I hope and I encourage everybody to go and look into more details about your work and the type of things you're doing. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there going, "Crikey, I wish I could travel so much and do so much and all those things." But any final words from you, Sally?
I think with the marathons that I do, people can kind of go, wow, that's inspirational, that's amazing. I believe that anyone can complete a marathon if they want to. And the reason I say that is if you have a loved one, a child, a parent, a friend who's 26.2 miles away and they are struggling, if there's no cars, trains, buses, bikes, any way of getting there apart from on feet, we would get there. I'm pretty sure that most people, we would not get there at the same time, but we would find a way of getting there. And with all the marathons that I do, I don't go for time. And again, when people say to me, what time are you going for? Because people seem to be obsessed with, if you do well, is how the time is. And I say, the time of my life, because again, I am in control of having a good time. I can help other people along the way. I always make sure I have a smile on my face, however hard I'm finding it. And if I can inspire young people to think, actually, I could do that. Maybe I can get running and have fun, and do it at the same time. Then, yeah, that's what I get, want to get over. And it's not for the elite, and it doesn't have to be a marathon. It could be, just getting out with the grandkids. It could be, whatever this the significance of a big challenge is for someone, is to work towards that and just prove to yourself that you can do it, because I believe that we're all more capable than we think we're able to do.
I love that. And again, it just opens up so many thoughts of what we can do and how we can do it. And but you're right, it's everybody's individual, aren't they? And the thing I like the thing about time of your life, because as a runner who looks at times and I'm looking at my pacing and I'm looking at all those, it's important, isn't it? Just let that go and just enjoy it
For
and
me, because again, I've got this I'm not good enough story. So if I set myself 4 hours
don't hit
and
it.
I do 4:02, I'm automatically a
Fail.
failure.
Yeah,
Whereas if I tell myself that, I want to go and enjoy it, I
yeah.
can control whether I enjoy it or not.
And then
Um,
you probably achieve more than you were expecting as well, often.
well, I never ever thought that I would be running, yeah, I say running, moving for the distance of a marathon.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Um,
84.
and yeah, only one person can come first in a marathon. But there's so many other stories, and I just would encourage people to listen to other people's stories in whatever they're doing, because we all have a story in us, and we all have something going on beneath the surface. So just reach out to someone and say, tell me something I don't know about you. Because yeah, it's great. It's great to engage with people, and I just love listening to what other people have got to say. And I also love talking, as you can.
Oh, I love it. You know what? But I do that as well. And I genuinely, and I'm going to close this now, Sally, but I've loved listening to you talking about your journey, your story. We did talk about this a few weeks ago and then we're here today recording and I'm thinking, I just love it because I'm just consuming all of this really interesting content from you in the sense of you're sharing with me something really insightful, really powerful. You're using that to share for the speaking that you do. And obviously anybody listening, if you're looking for a great speaker to come and talk about mental health with some colourful costumes rather than people turning up in black polo shirts like me. Feel free to reach out to Sally. I will drop all your details into this episode as well, so people know where to find you. But Sally, thank you so much. I really genuinely mean that. And I wish you all the very best with your next adventures. I know you're maybe sporting just a slight injury at the moment, and I fingers crossed it heals quickly so you're able to go and do your big long runs that you've got coming up. So fingers crossed. But look after yourself. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch up.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, really, really nice, lovely speaking to you. Thank you very much. And thank you to your listeners for listening.
No worries. Thank you. Take care now.